Overseas tonight, a second day of missile tests in Iran, but today's testing comes with a dire warning aimed at Israel. According to reports, Iran launched 2 missiles with the phrase, "Israel must be wiped out," written in Hebrew and appearing on those missiles. The Obama administration has only responded that we really need to warn these folks as it becomes increasingly clear that Iran intends to disregard the wishes of the United States. For more, let's welcome in from Newsmax Washington, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs, Ambassador Lincoln Bloomfield, Jr., who's currently chairman at the Stimson Center. Link, as always, we appreciate your time here on Newsmax Prime. Now, these particular tests violate a UN resolution banning ballistic missile technology. What is behind Iran's continued violations?
Well, I think part of it, JD, is that they're trying to convince themselves and their people that the regime is not in trouble. I mean, it's one thing to develop a strong defensive capability. We tend to do it in secret. For them to be boasting about it and writing messages and embarrassing the vice president when he's in Israel is more of a propaganda stunt. It's also true that the missiles themselves are dangerous, so we have to take account of both. But this tells us something about the weakness of the regime.
Well, let me talk more about that. You mentioned the fact our vice president, Joe Biden, is in Israel right now. So is propaganda really the only reason Iran is conducting the tests right now?
Well, they obviously like sticking a finger in our eye. That's true. But they've just had elections where at least half the people who wanted to run were disqualified in advance because they didn't pass the loyalty test. And so they may be trying to show the people that they're flexing muscles, they're standing up to America, they're standing up to Israel. And don't forget, I mean, they've had 2 or 3 years to build up Hezbollah as well during the fight in Syria, and we haven't said a word about that. So if I were Israel, I'd be concerned about the growing military capability that's springing up all around them. So the question is, what do we do about it?
Yeah, Ambassador, you use the term sticking a finger in our collective eye, but you think back in January, Iran captured 10 of our sailors, also fired close to some of our ships. Beyond propaganda, do the Iranians basically believe they can push the United States around with our current commander-in-chief?
Well, you know, that's a very political question, and it's an election year, so we're in the last year of this administration. I think that the lesson for foreign policy people on both sides of the aisle is that you have to stand for something. You have to show people that America must be respected. We don't need people to kneel before us. We don't need to make them put their hands behind their head and bow before us. We don't force them to make apologies on camera, and we don't demand that we get thanked for the privilege of doing these indignities. But, you know, we just need to stand up for our interests, and people need to know that America can't be pushed around. So we don't need to be unreasonable about it, but in recent years, I think we've given Iran far too much leeway.
And in fact, Ambassador, you spoke earlier today about human rights and democracy in Iran. How bad is the Iranian government when it comes to human rights? About 40 seconds, Link.
We're very silent on this. About 3 people a day are executed in Iran. If their population of 80 million were scaled up to the U.S. size, that would be 11 death penalty executions a day, 7 days a week. Now, are these all people who are sexual deviants or drinking alcohol or drugs? No. These are dissidents, and the ones that aren't counted are pulled off the streets with no notice whatsoever. So we don't know the real number, but there's about 2,300 executions under this moderate President Rouhani.
Lincoln Bloomfield, Jr., Ambassador, we very much appreciate your time and the work you're doing as chairman of the Stimson Center. Thanks so much for your time this evening from Newsmax Washington. Now, you heard what Link had to say about Iran and what they're up to. Love to get your comments. Send them to me at newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up, more on Iran with Mike Hayden. Stay